So, okay, personal grounding devices. Wrist straps. Before people started using garments as part of the operator grounding system, the original thing was a wristband and a coil cord. Okay? And you put on the wrist strap and you plugged in the thing and you went and you pushed the little button, you're looking for a green light or a red light. And if you got a fail, the first thing you did was you checked to see if my wrist strap is put on snug, if I'm wearing it snugly. And if I am, then you would take an ESD lotion, you put some ESD lotion on, right? And then you turn around and you retest, okay? Because if your skin is dry, it may not be making good contact with the grounding device, okay? We developed garments that have a designated system, so you got a snap on the hip, and you've got the cuff, and the cuff is like a wide wristband and stuff. So if you go up and you put the thing on, you plug the thing in, you push the little button, and you get a red light instead of a green light, first thing you ought to do is double check and see, has your cuffs lost the elasticity? Is your cuff still snug? Are you wearing a long sleeve something and your cuff is over the outside of your sleeve? Okay. Maybe take some ESD lotion, put some lotion on to re-moisten, okay, and then turn around and retest again. Then if you fail, then turn around and notify the supervisor, and then they will look for what the failure mechanism was on it. But we need to do those things, same as what we always did on these when you're now dealing with the garment, because all the garment is acting right now is like a big hands-free, but it's basically a wristband, so to speak. This. Some benches have monitors, right? Not all benches, but some of them do. Okay. Your touch testing. I think you guys do it once a day. Okay. I'll be talking to Mike and pushing the monitor. I'd like you to really test twice a day. Okay? Because if you come in and you test in the morning and you need to put on the hand lotion, what's her name?
Jean.
Jean. Yeah. You need to put on, and don't sit there and lift your thing and then go past. Because if you do that, come back 10 minutes later, see if you pass again. You probably won't, right. So you use ESD. Do you know why you use ESD hand lotion as opposed to regular hand lotion? Do you want to know?
Yeah.
Of course you do. The reason being, all ESD hand lotion does is it eliminates all of the stuff that's in regular hand lotion that can affect two things. Number one, it can cause metals to corrode faster. Number two, it can inhibit solderability. So if you use regular hand lotion, okay, you can leave behind residue that's going to turn around and cause some of the metal components to corrode faster. And if somebody goes to solder it, it may not solder properly. So that's what ESD handles. It eliminates all of that stuff, and there's some really funky tests that have to go through. You know, you take copper, and you take some tin, and you put the stuff on it, and you got to age it, and do all, and you look for corrosion on it and stuff. So, but if you go, and if you needed to do hand lotion in the morning, because it was winter, and you were dry, and you didn't pass, do you think you'd pass at 1 o'clock after you came back from lunch? No. So it'd be a good thing to find out. You might, right, but you wouldn't always want to bet on it. Right. Okay? Because you've probably taken your wristband, you might have taken your wristband off, okay? And so you would go and you would do that test. Well, if if you're dry in the morning, you're probably going to be dry in the afternoon, so you get the double test. So that's one of the things I'd recommend on that. The people that have monitors, the monitor will turn around and tell them if they're having that problem, because they'll turn around and look at a beep on the monitor. The reason that monitors originally came out was because one of the things that happens is coil cords get flexed. Okay? And we all know that if you flex a wire enough, you start to break down the copper that's on the inside. In most cases, when you go to do the test, you're not putting any stress either here or here. You're just taking the thing and you're plugging it in and you're pushing the button. Okay? So monitors were done to determine if there was a problem with the cord. Now, for those of you that have monitors, okay, when everything's all done and good, you're going to get a green light and stuff. Okay, rarely will you get that, which basically says you just lost ground. Okay, unless you happen to turn around and disconnect without turning around and doing a park. Okay, so if you're walking away and you want to keep the thing from alarming, okay, there's a park snap, and if you turn around and if you touch the park snap at the time that you disconnect, you will not get an alarm, okay? But typically what you might run into is not that continuous alarm, okay, but a little alarm. Something like that. Like that. You're going to want to know why. So try to watch what you're doing and try to identify what you were doing exactly before you got that. And it might be a flexing of the coil cord in such a way, maybe the coil cord's wearing out and you're starting to get a little intermittent. Okay? Maybe you might happen to be turning around and touching a lamp. Okay? You might have, I've seen this happen before with lamps. 3-prong plug, okay? Power strip's not wired properly, and every time you turn on the light or you happen to touch the light when it is on, because it's not grounded, there's a little voltage. And this was not designed to do it, but it does it. And so every time you touch that light, when you hear that, there is something wrong. It's not a false alarm. It's not checking to see if you're awake. There is something wrong at your station at that moment. Try to identify what you're doing, what causes that to happen, because that should not happen. Now, an ESD event, just so that you'll know, this is like maybe second, half a second, quarter second. An ESD event takes place in nanoseconds, thousandths of a second. So if you've got this, you've got something wrong. Find it and fix it so that when you work all day long, you hear it. No beep. We're not doing foot grounders. We might be doing foot grounders at some point. Foot grounders are for mobile people, okay, to keep them grounded while they are mobile. A lot of times I see them on a production line. People are standing all day long and they're having to move a little bit, move this way and that way, or reach over here and get stuff. And a ground cord, wrist strap, coil cord thing just would not make sense. They'd be tied up in equipment, strangled in the equipment. 5 people would be all tied up in a little ball or whatever. So we make the floor ESD, or we put down an ESD floor mat and we ground it, and we put foot grounders on the people and we ground the people that way. Okay? Be it known that even if you had an ESD floor and even if you were wearing foot grounders, you sit in a chair, you must be wire grounded. You must have that coil cord plugged in. You must. Or we do what we call the maquiladora grounding system, which is you put one foot on the floor when you put inside your chair that's wearing the foot grounder, and we drive a 20-penny spike through the top of your foot into that floor, so that foot is always on the floor. We don't sell very many of them. Most people don't like them. Okay, so personal grounding verifications. They must be tested at least once a day. I like 2. If you had foot grounders, they must be tested at least once a day. I like 2. Mandatory daily log when you do your little test, your initial, things like that. There's a log of it. That's cool. Okay. Work surfaces. Okay. Your company has a program. Periodically it tests to make sure that the work surface is good. But unlike your wrist strap that gets tested once a day or twice a day, they don't get tested. Okay? So one of the things I'd like you to do is take a look at the mat. Typically there's going to be a snap and a ground cord coming off of that mat. Take a look at that mat. Just get in the habit of doing it. Make your work area clean before you start work. And check to make sure that ground cord is connected to the mat. Facility that I used to work with until it was purchased by Celestica and they closed it was up in Columbus, Ohio. It was a Western Electric that became a Lucent facility. They had 3,000 benches. They had some guy that was kind of like a painter on a bridge. You paint the bridge, and when you get done, you turn around and you start back the other way. 40 hours a week, all this guy did was he went around from one bench to the next bench to the next bench. and he did his periodic verification testing on the pick. When he got done, it was time to go all over again and start back around. Your company does periodic verification, I think maybe about quarterly, where they would check it. So look to see if the wire is there, because that was the one thing that he found with his 3,000 benches. The biggest repeat violation was that the ground cord was not connected to the mat. So just look for it, because it could be like that for 2 or 3 months before it actually got discovered in periodic verification when they do any testing on it. Okay, and that means you're working on a grounded thing. That means theoretically everything that went across that bench is suspect. So just keep an eye on it. That's a good thing to do. See how much training's worth for you? You could do conductive floor mats. You would also turn around and check those, do a periodic verification on those. Maintaining your environment, something that's very important. These are ESD mats. They've got a very, very specific set of electrical properties. Okay? To maintain their properties and to maintain their looks, most mats are replaced because they ugly out before they wear out. Electrically, they're fine. They're just ugly. Kind of like carpet in your house. You get your carpet really, really stained. It's still carpet. It does everything that carpet does. It just looks bad. So you buy new carpet. Okay? So the mats look bad and people buy new mats. Now, they're my mats. I happen to like that. Buy them every single week. I think that's beautiful, but it's not really cost effective. So from your end, you want to maintain the life of the mat. One of the things you do to maintain the life of the mat is you periodically clean it. And you don't clean it with just anything. You don't use Windex, you don't use alcohol, you don't turn around and use 409, you don't use Simple Green, you don't use industrial cleaners. All of those may clean the mat. But they can do two things. Number one, they can pull some of the plasticizer properties out of the rubber, okay, so that it becomes brittle. The other thing they can do is they leave behind a little residue that you can't see that affects the electrical properties, so your parts and things aren't properly grounded when they're on the mat. So, clean your mats regularly. Use a good ESD mat cleaner thing when you turn around and you clean the mats. You will prolong the life of the mats. The mats will be here longer, okay, which is good for your company. Check the ground cords, as I mentioned. Use your ESD hand lotion. Keep plastics 12 inches away. All these things you can do. Okay, if there's insulators cannot be grounded, we're back to the ionizer type thing. As I said, the ionizer floods the area with charged plus and minus ions. And so if you've got insulators that need to be in the area and you have an ionizer, that will turn around and it will neutralize the charges on that piece of plastic, so everything is zero. And in Mother Nature, zero is a good thing, unlike your bank account, which is a bad thing to be zero. Okay, so types of ionizers. We got bench top. That's an example of a bench top. It's a mini. There are blow-off guns, okay, that people can use. There are overhead ionizers. They go up over the bench. They turn around, they blow down. Ionizers require periodic maintenance. Okay, important for the company to know. That's why we're doing this thing and stuff. If a ionizer is out of balance, like this one over here is new, it's going to put out the same number of positive as it is negative. But if it's out of balance, let's say that it's putting out 50 volts positive, more positive than negative. You know, it'll charge everything in the area to 50 volts positive. So they've got to be kept in balance, which is part of the periodic cleaning of the little emitter points and stuff. They are also used to control particulate. We find this with people that are dealing with lenses, plastic lenses. Okay, you ever taken a piece of plastic and you wipe it and it's nice and clean and all of a sudden dust is on it again? Okay, because you've now put a charge on it and now it's attracting dust particles. That's why the tube TVs, they always got dirtier than anything else, because there was always a charge on the front of it and it attracted every dust particle from across the room onto the front of that TV screen. So if you've got a cleanliness issue area, something like that, you guys aren't dealing with lenses, but ionizers are good for that. There are companies right now. There's a thing that's out by the Missiles defense. Everybody that's a subcontractor in missiles defense, they put out an edict. You must control the relative humidity in your plant. If it drops below 30%, you must stop work or put in ionizers. Raytheon facilities are going crazy. You know, these are buildings that were like built back in World War II. Okay, 300,000 square foot building, not designed for humidity control, high ceilings and stuff. Humidity controls would probably cost them about $8 million. We're buying a lot of ionizers right now, but that was put in place by their customer. Okay, shielding. We talked a little bit about shielding bags and that type of thing. You might have seen the term, we've got it up here, Faraday cage effect. That was done by a guy named Michael Faraday. He discovered that he could put a bird inside a bird cage, and he could put all kinds of charges on the outside of the cage, and it didn't hurt the bird because the cage was metal and the charges didn't go inside the cage to hit the bird. They stayed on the outside of the metal, and so he became real famous. Whoopee. Basically what happens is that our metallized bags, our shielding containers, are the same way. They're conductive enough that the charges will always remain on the outside, which also means that for a Faraday cage to work, it needs to be a complete cage, if you will. So it needs to be, if it's a tote box, it's got to have a lid. If it's a bag, it's got to be closed. Charges are kept on the outside. Okay, we already said that. See, I got ahead of myself. Closed metallized bag, there it is again. Covered tote boxes, there it is again. Materials handling. Devices should only be unpackaged from their protective container, whether it be a box or a tray or a bag or whatever, at an ESD protected area. Exposed devices, when you're working on them, they need to be grounded. That means they're being worked on an ESD mat, on an ESD workstation, or they should be shielded. Okay? So, in most cases, the rule becomes parts are never removed from their protective packaging unless it's at an ESD bench by a grounded person, and when you're done working on it, put it back inside the bag. Simplest, best, easiest procedure. Okay? ESD Protected Workstation. It provides grounding for all conductors, people, other conductors on the mat. It may provide other peripheral types of pieces of equipment and stuff. Additional protection, ESD garments. You guys are using those. I didn't remember seeing any ESD gloves that are used here, or finger cots. Yeah? You do have gloves. Gloves or finger cots? Both?
Yeah, finger cots.
Finger cots.
And we have gloves that also.
Okay. There are dissipated binders and document handlers and flooring and all kinds of different packaging materials, and there's low charging or ESD tape. Okay, allow only trained people in the ESD protected area. You are now trained. You may all go to work. People that come into your area, they should be escorted by somebody that's trained. Talk to Mike, he said I can do this. You are now empowered. Your work area is your work area. If anybody comes up, handles something on your workbench, is not grounded, and you allow it to happen, you are allowing somebody to compromise your work. Me, if I'm going to go down the toilet, I want to pull the handle myself. So if I'm going to have shoddy work, I want to do the shoddy work. I don't want somebody else coming up and doing the shoddy work, and I'm not going to do shoddy work. So don't allow anybody else to come up and handle stuff at your bench. They come up, here, you got to put on a wrist strap, you got to do this, you got to do that. You got to do the things that you know need to be done to protect your product, or get away from my bench. You own that bench, you own that product while you have it. Protect it with your life. We've got written logs, we do personal testing, we've got shielding products that we need. You guys have a complete ESD control program, but you also know more now about how to properly use the stuff that you have. And you'll go back and you'll do a better job now than you did before.
Hey, mister, got all the time you want? He said, hey, look at this. Is he good or what?
Okay, any other questions? Everybody sign the log sheet? Okay, because you're all going to get a certificate and a quarter for a bad cup of coffee.
Now,
All righty. If there's no questions, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
thank you. Well done, well done. I like the way he comes and you can't even see him. He's going like this.
Thank you very, very much.